We're in the house here of Oliver Murtagh of Lissummon, and we're just going to go through a few little questions with Oliver just to get his memories of the GAA for Lissummon. Can you tell me, Oliver, what is your earliest memories of the GAA in Lissummon?
Well, my earliest memories would be right back to the time I was at school. I went to an old primary school up here in Lissummon, and there wasn't a team in the area at the time, but still and withal, we used to gather our pennies and buy a football and play football at lunchtime in the old schoolyard, and it was always Gaelic football. There was never a question of playing any other sport. It seemed to be the ethos of the area, and it was always Gaelic football we played. Now, going further back than that, my first memories was of my ma and dad taking me by the hand and going over to the Armagh Road, which is about a mile from here, and taking me to see Armagh playing in the athletic grounds in Armagh. And I was very, very young at the time. They literally did take me by the hand. At that time, spectators sat in around the sideline, and they brought me in there and set me on the grass in the front of them while the game was in progress. And I remember a very high ball being kicked by some of the Armagh players going very high and coming right down and landing on my head. And every time I think of it, I can still feel the pain of that ball landing on the top of my head. But I remember being fascinated by the players out on the field that day. They seemed to be giants of men to my small eyes, and I says, I want to play Gaelic football. And I was very determined that I would become a Gaelic player, and I did. And when I reached 12 or 13 or 14 years of age, there still wasn't a local team, but there was one in the neighbouring parish, and I went down there to them, and I got on their schoolboy team, and I was doing well, and for a year or so, and then I came on, and I really wanted onto their senior team. And it was also funny. I remember one day, one of their mainstays came round with a money box, and he said to me, even though I was a sub on the team, he says, you didn't pay in, he says. And that time you didn't have money. I had started to work that time, and my wages was £1 a week, and I just simply didn't have money in my pocket. And so he says, you'll have to go, he says. So I was absolutely mortified. He really put me out of the field that day because I didn't pay in. So I came back home, and I was very downhearted, and my brother, who was a keen footballer, he says, why don't you go to Carrick, which is a team on the other side of the parish. So I went there and got established again on their minor team, and I enjoyed 12 very successful years with them. And that was my earliest memories.
And you mentioned members of your family, your mother and father there, but of your own family, I know you have a wife, Bernie, and 3 children. What, how did they get involved in the GAA?
Yes, the GAA activity always run through our family. My father did play a bit of football in his time. This was way back in the 1916s, and there's a lot of other activity going on in 1916, as you know, and he didn't have much time really to play football. He had other things occupying him at the time. I had an older brother than me, Paddy, who was a very, very good footballer. He played for the Carrick team on the other side of the parish. And all my brothers, Brian, Sean and Ronan, were all involved and played football till ripe old ages.
And
sorry, you mentioned Bernie then. It's one of I'm very lucky in sometimes GAA can split a family, especially if one partner is not interested and the other is. But I'm very, very lucky in that respect that my wife is keenly interested in GAA as well. So we have had a fantastic time over the years going to and fro the matches and our involvement in general.
And what have you any notable experiences from your relatives of GAA, memories down through the ages?
Oh yeah, they gone back again to the old days. There's no televisions or technology in the country at that time, but we had a radio, and there used to be an old neighbour. He used to come in and he used to say, "Is Michael O'Hare on your radio next Sunday?" And we would have flipped up the paper. "Yes, there's a match on, John." "Okay, Mrs. Murtagh," he would have said, "will you keep me that seat?" This was the seat beside the radio, a bit hard to hear, so we had to sit close to the radio. And we all would have gathered round and listened to Michael O'Hare that time. And I used to notice my father, before the match started, he would have got a page out and he would have wrote down the teams and their positions and all. And as Michael O'Hare related the names of the players, he followed it with a pencil on the page, giving him a sort of an idea where the ball was on the field. So that was his visual on the matches in the 1950s.
How did the GAA impact on your family life? I know you said Bernie there was a GAA person herself, but how was there any other impacts on your family life, because it takes up quite a bit of time?
Oh yeah, it had a very positive impact. You know, I think it was a very uniting force in our house. As I said, she was equally as interested and knew a lot of the qualities of the game and had a better memory, in fact, than I had. And many's a Sunday dinner we would have missed in the house because we were rushing away to a match somewhere, and when our kids were young we parcelled them into the car and took them on. And it was a very, very busy life, and the GAA took up such a part of our life that things like holidays, the first thing we looked up was the GAA fixtures to make sure our holidays wasn't clashing with any big fixture or anything. So we built our holidays around the football, not the football, around our lives. So it brought a lot of enjoyment to us. So it did, not only the local matches, but we travelled all over Ireland. We followed Armagh everywhere and made great friends, social friends all over as a result of all this.
And as you mentioned about supporting your local team, Lissamon and obviously Carrickcruppen that you played for, but how in those early days did you support your county, because there were the dark days of county football, unlike the present time?
Mm-hmm. Well, ever since that first match described earlier there, I was always very, very keen in supporting the county. And I remember I was only at school at the time, and there wasn't many cars in the country. So at morning mass I would have went round the different men who owned cars. There was only about half a dozen of them actually owned cars, and first of all, would they go into the match, and was there a chance of getting a lift and all. And one particular man, old Philip Quinn, I have to pay homage to him. Philip always said yes, he was going to the match and he had a place for me. I was only about 14 or 15 at the time, and I always liked to wear the colours, the Armagh colours and all. In those days it was a paper hat, and you would have bought this orange and white paper hat and I put it on your head, and it was great if the weather was good. But if it was a wet day, you winded up with an orange cheek and a white cheek as the dye ran down. The rain brought the dye of the hat down round your face. A very funny sight. The fact they still do it today, you know, you see them painting their faces. I think that's where they got the idea from.
And what game for you, like taking aside the All Ireland final, which Armagh won in those days, but what local game would stand out for you? Or maybe it is the Armagh final victory.
Oh,
that
it
sounds
was
like.
very, very memorable. Armagh had been so unsuccessful for years and years, and then finally it happened. And it was the same with the local club here. I played football myself, kept myself very fit and played football very late in life, but I still can't show you a championship medal. And the best game for me, the most memorable game, was our own wee local club here winning the Armagh Junior Championship in 2004. And to me that was a big thing, you know, because it was, you know, my son was on the team, nephews, neighbours, nearly everybody was related on the team, and the feeling that brought into the community at the time. And I was so proud of him that he had got his championship medal where I had failed, despite playing in 4 decades and I played in 2 senior finals, but still I can't show you a championship medal. So someone winning that wee junior final in 2004, it mightn't be much to a lot of people, but it was our lad.
And obviously the GAA impacts on all our lives in some way or other. What impact did it have on your life personally?
Well, I mentioned earlier there I had a long playing career, and after that, well, even during that, I became involved in the committee side of things. I was chairman of the club for a while. I done various stints at managing the team. I trained the team, and I became one of these GAA 7 nights a week kids, you know. And it, I found the club, you get a lot out of it, and it teaches you a lot of things, and it learns you a lot of things for life, you know what I mean. An example would be, you know, say public speaking, for instance. Now, regarding my work, occasionally I have to speak to a room full of people or something like that. Well, that was a trade I learned in the GAA club, because you could speak at meetings or functions and things like that, and that gave me the confidence. And then that was learned around the GAA club, and it was useful to me in my professional life, you know, as well. So that was one of the impacts. The other, you know, I always enjoyed being physically fit and all, and it was, you know, I suppose it kept me healthy, that I'm very thankful for as well, you know. And that's all about I can think of at the minute, you know.
Yeah, sure. And we live in a cross community, is a quite close knit community here in Lissamon, but what place does the GAA have in this community today, in today's society?
Well, in this particular locality here, the club, it plays a major role, because it's the only organisation that carries the name Lissamon throughout the county. And it carries our name, and it's our boys and girls that support and give that Lissamon name that drive that it has. And
yeah, and the what changes have you seen in GAA over your career?
all the changes are absolutely massive. It's unbelievable, but of course there's massive changes in society in general, but I remember I used to go to there was a team back here in the early 50s, and those guys changed their clothes at the back of the ditches, they call it, and you used to, as the match went on, you could look over and see the bundle of clothes and jackets and things hanging on the hedge while the boys were playing. They didn't have any facilities of any sort, and the changes that has come down through, you know, the wealth of facilities that's built up throughout Ireland now with GAA, the professionalism of GAA, it's unrivaled, you know, and our own small area here that's surviving on about 100 families, like our facilities alone, you know, we've got the changing room, the new field, the new hall, meeting rooms and all that type of thing. Basically, you know, it's a very, even though it's voluntary and it's all put there voluntary and people give their time and all voluntary, there's a massive